Back here on HQ, we're getting into week 6 of college football. A lot of exciting matchups on deck. We got Air Force, Navy, Penn State, UCLA. That is on CBS. Then we have an all-SEC matchup with Vandy and Bama, Texas Tech and Houston. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have Miami and Florida State. Miami trying to stay perfect there in this ranked-on-ranked ACC on ACC matchup. Meanwhile, Florida State trying to make a statement and bounce back from that brutal overtime loss to Virginia.
Is our newsroom going to be
if
on
they
Monday?
win?
No, either way.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
many Miami people, so many Florida State people, and they're all equally annoying.
I'm glad you're saying that. I'm a Gator grad, and so I feel that to the umpteenth degree. I really do, Amanda. And so I can only imagine how annoying it's going to be down here in South Florida. And with that, let's welcome in our college football analyst, my fellow Florida Gator friend here, Richard Johnson, and then Shehan Jeyarajah. Guys, great to see you. One of the biggest matchups, if not the biggest matchup here as we're heading into week 6. Miami, they're going to Tally, taking on FSU. So want to talk about CFP implications for both of these teams. I want to start with the FSU side of things. So Shehan, walk us through both scenarios for Florida State. How big is a win for their resume, especially when you're considering last week? And then how detrimental is a loss for the Seminoles here?
Well, I think that if you win this game, then kind of all's forgiven for last week. You still have that win against Alabama in week 1. You jump right back in to the ACC title race. In fact, you kind of take it over if you beat Miami, certainly. But this is, I think, a game with a lot of implications for this team. Obviously, Alabama has rebounded since that week 1 game. They've looked really good the past few weeks. And I think that the big thing for Florida State is you kind of want to prove that that performance was no fluke, that this is a team that is capable of competing at the national level. Even if they lose this game, I think that if they're able to show that they can hang and show that, hey, you know what, we're a team that can be in the ACC title game, have a chance to go to the college football playoff, that's really what you need to prove in a matchup like this. And we've seen the way that Miami's playing to this point. I think for Florida State to show up and have a good performance, it would say a lot about the state of this program, and I think would also set them up really well heading into the home stretch.
All right, so let's go to the Miami side of things because they are 2-0 against AP-ranked teams this season. So, Richard, what would a win or a loss do? Starting with the win, right? Because if they get wins against 3 AP-ranked teams up until this point, what does that do for them in terms of their resume?
Well, I think for Miami, it makes them pretty unimpeachable, not even for the resume aspect, but I think just from the bragging rights aspect. I mean, that's a massive amount of bragging rights for Miami to say that we're 3-0 in the state of Florida, funny enough, after beating USF, Florida State, and Florida sort of in a row here. I think it'd be huge. They're going to go into a hostile atmosphere, Doak Campbell Stadium. One thing you can bet about Florida State is that atmosphere will be rip-raring to go in Tallahassee for this game. It's going to be something of Florida State's Super Bowl because, in my opinion, I don't think Florida State can take a loss here and be in the college football playoff. If they lose this game, I think they are squarely on the bubble of the playoff, and in my opinion, probably out when we get to it in December because they probably won't be in the ACC championship game. This Miami team has to prove that on the road, they can be the same solid outfit that we've seen the last couple weeks. We haven't seen this up and down fluctuation like we saw with Miami last season. Their games have, quite frankly, been pretty boring. And I say that complimentary of Miami because they're able to control games basically from snap to snap, basically from the first minute of the game to the last. That's the control you need to show that you're a consistent team throughout the season.
It's kind of a, a nice problem to have if your team is winning games and making it boring where you feel pretty comfortable the entire time, right? Next up, the other ranked-on-ranked matchup that we have this week, we have number 16 Vandy taking on number 10 Alabama. So, Shehan, you mentioned Alabama saying, hey, since week 1, they've really bounced back and they've looked pretty good. So what would a win here over Vandy do for their resume?
It would be really big. Again, I think that it just helps reestablish a new narrative of this team. We've gotten to see Alabama get back into the national conversation after they beat Georgia, went on the road last week. Well, this is the game last year where things started to go wrong. And by the way, it was after a win over Georgia that they stumbled against Vanderbilt last year. Nobody is missing these Vanderbilt Commodores this year. They're number 16 in the country. They're undefeated. You look at Diego Pavia's stats right now, they're off the charts. He's legitimately in the Heisman conversation. So for Alabama, this is not a trap game. This is not an overlook game. This is a big time game where you have to come in and put your foot down. And you also look at how difficult Alabama's schedule is the entire rest of the year. This is one of those games that you have to have if you want to be taken seriously. The benefit of being a team like Florida State and picking up a win over a big time opponent in non-conference is that it gives you some wiggle room. When you lose that game, all of that wiggle room is gone, especially when you look at the number of quality teams left on that schedule.
Richard, what about the Vandy side of things? Would a win just, propel them right into the top 10, and would a loss maybe end their CFP hopes at all, or is there still a shot?
Well, I think I think a win shows that, hey, we annually beat Alabama. This is what we do at Vanderbilt. But to me, I think when you look at Vanderbilt's schedule, it is fair to question how strong their schedule has been up until this point. It's also fair to say that if they were LSU, for instance, you wouldn't bat an eye at the schedule that they faced. You would just see the performances as they've stacked up, and you would de facto just give them the benefit of the doubt for being a good team. But because they're Vanderbilt, we don't do that. The South Carolina win is big, but remember, Lenore Sellers knocked out of that game, so they played South Carolina, a much more diminished version of South Carolina. But Vandy's going to have cracks at it coming down the stretch here. They pushed that Texas team, by the way, last season to needing an onside kick to close them out last year. Vandy can compete. You see what they have on that schedule. There is still time for Vanderbilt to make up for it if they lose this game and were somehow able to run the table or come pretty close to it coming down the stretch. They can still be a dark horse in the SEC playoff race if they fall on Saturday, and especially if it's a close game. Now, if they get blown out by 35 points and, the rest of the schedule before that is sort of seen to be a mirage, it's a different story. But if they compete in this game and they don't win it, I think that's still okay for Vanderbilt because they've got opportunities coming down the stretch.
Yeah, to your point, that next stretch is no joke after Bama, LSU, Mizzou, and then Texas. All right, let's get to a battle of 4-0 teams with Texas Tech and Houston. So, Shehan, for Houston, if they do get a win here, does that just put them in the top 15 in your eyes?
Well, in so many ways, I think that Houston has been, maybe you even want to say the Arizona State of this year. They were picked low in the conference. They, of course, missed a bowl game last year, but they've been pretty impressive through the first couple of weeks. Now, they also have that schedule piece working against them. You look, of course, they play Rice, pretty well. They have a weirdly close game on the road against Oregon State. You kind of want to flush that one if you're them. But this is the opportunity where we figure out, is this a nice start to the season? Or is this a Big 12 contender? Texas Tech has been the real deal through the early part of the season. If you look at some of the advanced metrics, this is a top 5 team in the country. They're going to beat you up on the trenches. They're going to create a lot of opportunities defensively. So for Houston, how do you handle that pressure with a first-year offensive coordinator in Slade Nagel? How do you handle that with a first-year defensive coordinator in Austin Armstrong? They've done a really good job of playing complementary football through the first couple of games. If they win this game, it completely changes the way that we're talking about this program.
All right, yeah, looking to start 5-0 there for Houston for the first time since 2016. Richard, when it comes to Texas Tech, how much pressure are they really under here? Because if they lose, do you see them being in kind of like a must-win-out sort of situation in order to get to the Big 12 championship?
Not necessarily. I think the Big 12 is going to be a league with a lot of parity as well. First of all, I looked at that Kansas State November 1st game as the game that could be sort of a trap game for them. And then obviously you've got Arizona State in a couple weeks here. But what Texas Tech showed against Utah is they showed that they're dominant in the Big 12. They showed that they're the team to beat in the Big 12. That was not a fluke. It probably could have been worse if not for some turnovers by Texas Tech in the first half of the game. But they bring up the backup quarterback Hammond in the second half of that game when Baron Morton goes down, and they keep rolling. They looked physically superior on both sides of the ball. That's the biggest test for me with Texas Tech against Houston, because Houston's pretty good up front. They've been kicking some butt with their defensive line. So as far as Texas Tech is concerned, the money that they spent in the offseason was along the trenches mostly. They got the best players that they could, Lee Hunter, Melo Height, David Bailey. They got really, really good defensive linemen. And they got it for this reason, so that they don't necessarily have to go out and outscore a lot of people and play these classic Big 12 shootouts. They can play more sort of new school Big 12 football and be physically dominant and control games.
Texas Tech, Houston. That is on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And tonight on CBS Sports Network, we have Sam Houston going up against New Mexico State. So we do want to highlight Sam Houston's right tackle, Colt Dietrich. So he's got talent. He's got a great build. So is this somebody that has pro potential down the line, Shehan?
Yeah, this is a really interesting prospect right down the road from me in Riesel, Texas, in Central Texas. 6'6", 310 pounds, great body, great film. You know, he's their second highest graded player on Pro Football Focus behind Ultimate Castle, who's been out with an injury at running back. And he's somebody who I think has been a mainstay for this team. Sam Houston's offense has struggled certainly through the first couple weeks of the year, but they've played incredibly difficult competition. So I think that Colt Dietrich is a player to watch in this game tonight. And if I'm Sam Houston, I'm running to that right side of the line as much as I can tonight.
Yeah, Dietrich is a player who was all conference last year, came into school and needed a year to kind of fill out his frame, that 6'6" big frame. You got to fill that out, put some weight on it so that he can play big-time college football. He played really small school ball in the state of Texas, but he was a three-sport athlete, played baseball and basketball, and he's really a team leader this season. And if you pay attention, he's got a chain that's got his dog's name on it, Tank, and the dog's silhouette is in the chain as well. It's really neat. You can see it, he posted on social media. But Dietrich is a player that, quite frankly, and this is kind of the story of being a G6 program, he's a player that a lot of power conference teams are going to look to pluck when the transfer portal comes open in January, because that size, that skill set is a player that you want in the trenches, anybody wants in the trenches, especially with the eligibility he's got left.
Guys, my cat's name is Mumford. Could I get a chain that has like a silhouette of my little cat and it just says like Mum in diamonds decked out? I think I'm going to try to make that happen. John, Richard, we appreciate it. Previewing all the matchups that we have on deck for week 6 in college football. And just a reminder again, tonight, Sam Houston at New Mexico State. That is 9 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Make sure you check it out.